I hired myself to build a workshop because I figured that was the only way I could afford this. I've never done this, so how hard could it be? Well, a lot harder than I thought. But I have an idea that I think most woodworkers overlook in their workshop layout. And I also have a thought that might make you change your workshop. Let's do this. In this video, you will see how I started to build my dream workshop, what issues and dangers I have faced, how I got to the point where I am now, and what lies ahead. But most importantly, how much money I've spent. I mean, money's such a great invention, at least if you don't have any. If you're rich, good for you, but it's not for me. I mean, how boring would that be if you could buy whatever you want all the time? Nuh-uh, not for me. I love the struggle of getting some and then spending it right away on electric outlets. I am literally emptying my account to build a workshop. If I was rich, I would probably have hired someone to do it for me. And what would be the fun in that? Not fun at all. I love the process of building. Regarding the cost perspective, the first thing we did was getting the silos out of the barn where I am building my workshop. Yes, I'm basically building a building inside a building. Anyway, the cost for that wasn't that much. It was a lot of work, which is also a currency, but when you have your father-in-law to help, that might be considered free labor. Don't worry, I feed him and I am a kind son-in-law. Tearing down stuff usually doesn't mean any other cost than labor, but I made a mistake that would cost me money that I didn't need to spend. For instance, I went to rent this big jackhammer that we ended up not needing because the tractor basically pulled the entire thing out on its own. And then a bunch of concrete and blocks to cover up all the holes where the silos previously stood, where the door leading into the cows were, and add a pillar to hold a steel beam later on. It's the perfect way of dividing the work, so I am recording and my wife is doing the actual tiling or bricklaying. Perfect, it's perfect. I'm getting ahead of myself here a bit. There were cows through that hole, so we had to close that up. But thinking about it now, I should have made a window instead. How cool wouldn't that have been if I could stand there cutting up stuff on the table saw and have a cow audience looking at me? Cow Twitch. So the prep work before we could even start building ended up on about $1,150. Account empty, but I had a sponsor take care of that. PCB Way. Love you guys. If it wasn't for PCB Way, this workshop would never have happened. Now, this might look stupid and dangerous, but it's not, because PCB Way's got my back. No, literally, they've got my back. So PCB Way don't just make PCB and PCB assemblies, they do all sorts of other stuff. Like 3D printing, CNC machining. You just upload your file to their website, they will quote you, and if you decide to purchase, they will make it and ship it to you. Thanks PCB Way. Now, how do I get down from here? It's easy overthinking things. I don't mean the amount of eggs in a pancake, that's always 3. I prefer 3 if they are normal sized. No, I mean things like, if I'm just doing this once, I want it to be as optimized as possible so that I can feel that this workshop is for me. A couple of things on that list is definitely, I want to be able to go into the workshop and start all the big machines without any moving around. Just push a button to start the planer thicknesser and go. And one of those things is having a good layout. I still don't have that because it's so hard to figure it out. I don't even know what tools I will have. I want to have space enough to work on longer materials, but I think I have a good idea for that. I I want to have as much of all clutter hidden, so a lot of storage solutions, but smart storage. 3D printed custom storage that not only stores it neatly, storage that will help you remember where everything is. Like storage at a kindergarten. If you've ever been on a boat, they have really clever storage solutions because they have to. But then we build big houses, it's like we don't care for that clever storage anymore. We just throw stuff everywhere. And lastly, I want something that I think is really important that a lot of woodworkers forget or overlook, but I'll get to that later. And in order to get all of those things, I think I'm overthinking all the steps and I pause the work in order to figure things out. I really like detailed things, so in the morning when I get into the door to the workshop, I've got my light switch here. So, is there something else I want there? Do I, for instance, want my protective headphones there? And in case I do I also want a charger next to that? Because then I need an electric outlet there. And there's a ton of those things spinning around my head all the time. But it's 3 eggs, it's always 3 eggs. Come on. Really overthinking things. But I also want to at the same time. Because if you do this once in a lifetime, you probably want it to be perfect. In the beginning, I said there was something that would elevate your workshop, and it's an idea I've been carrying for a long time, so here we go. When we're kids, we have so many cool ideas, right? But as we get older, we sort of stop thinking in weird ways and we just think plain and simple thoughts. Now, I had to do this in Swedish because she's too young to do it in English, but here's what I found.
Jag ska ha en pool på mitt rum, badballonger.
Vad är det för något?
Att det är vatten i dem, att man kan spräcka dem. En låtsassol, godis. Av godis. En hamsterlek.
Vad är det för något?
Att man tar en boll och kastar genom hålet. Och så ser man en unicorn i mitten. Rabatthund. Rabatthund. En glassbil. En glassbil. Pappersolsol. Med tornet. Och med valparna i som de åker i hissen.
If I can steal some of that creativity, I can make a workshop that is fun to be in the rest of my life. Really, what you should do is let your kids build your workshop, because they would have way cooler ideas than me. To tell you the truth, I did get some good ideas. If you had your own space that you could do anything you want with, what would you do? Would you rather have a candy vending machine built inside the wall or a nice clamp rack? Come on, it's obvious. Both. Why not a record for how long I can swing and jump from the steel beam? That's not too bad. It doesn't need to be boring. I shouldn't say boring because a workshop is fun in itself, but our houses have nothing like this. Why don't add a climbing wall? Why not have a swing? It's fun. So I did get a couple of ideas from this. Instead of a swing, for instance, what if I had a nice comfy swing chair hanging from the ceiling that I could hang out in and come up with new ideas? By the way, Jimmy DeResta told me not to use the miter saw like this, so I'm just repeating what he said. Don't use it like this. I want a TV to watch stuff. I want a fridge with nice drinks. What about a vending machine? Why not? I think a workshop needs to be playful in order to spark creativity. So the goal is to have something that is both organized and nice looking, but with a lot of cool features. What are your ideas if you could think like a child? And now I'm faced with this dilemma. I am building my workshop that, from what I know, will be my last workshop as well. So I can't just build it on a whim. I need to think things through. I need to overthink things. And on top of that, I need to do so many things I've never done before. I don't know how to do them, so how can I even order material when I don't even know what material I need? I just couldn't get started after taking the silos down. I kept postponing the workshop. I actually told my kids the workshop would be done by Christmas, the past Christmas, and it wasn't even started then, because they are getting my current workshop as their new rooms. And the last video was almost a year ago and nothing really happened after that. Well, except that we decorated an entire barn for a party. That also meant making 3 tables. We started turning our garage into a store with the help of some awesome supporters of the 3 Northern Makers podcast. This is really a future project where we want to be more self-sufficient on food, but also try to make a living from selling things that we make. And we started restoring the house that we hopefully one day can live in. But the workshop, not so much. And that's because I kept overthinking and postponing. I mean, I had good ideas about the end result, including the one thing that I think most woodworkers overlook, but I didn't know how to get there. The main issue I had back then was that I was thinking about how I could construct the walls, and that might seem like an easy task, but I was thinking about it all. How can I prevent mice from getting in? If I put up walls with insulation inside of an existing building, what do I put on the back? And how do I attach it? Before I raise the walls or after? After seems impossible. All those questions kept me from doing anything. But eventually I couldn't postpone anymore, so I ordered a bunch of things for the workshop build. I was asking friends and ChatGPT, and I ordered materials so that we could start building the walls of the workshop. Quick note, I used ChatGPT to calculate how much of everything I needed, but I realized just before ordering that ChatGPT isn't really reliable when it comes to maths, which you would think. And as soon as we started that, I started asking myself, why didn't I do this sooner? As soon as you get started, it doesn't feel that hard at all. I keep coming back to the same realization every time. How do you eat the elephant? Piece by piece. You just have to get started. Damn it, just get started. So the walls slowly came up. We nailed most of them together and added wind protection on the back, followed by a masonite on the walls to protect it a bit more from mice. Now, if you're wondering why we didn't insulate directly against the corrugated steel and build from that would certainly buy more space, well, honestly, it felt easier this way. Building a room within a room. Basically, it was what I could wrap my head around. My very tiny head covered in hair. So not all walls were easy to do because right here I want water to come in, so we actually had to drill a hole through the wall to get to the water and install that, which took some time of course. But now we have an inlet for water, which means I can make coffee and wash my dirty hands. Oh, and perhaps even add a small tank for hot water right here, so you know. So this corner will have some kind of workbench with a sink, that's the idea at least. And to start with, I think I might make a small room right here just as an office and for 3D printing before I can do the office, which is going to be upstairs. It's hard to doing work on your own. Sometimes you just need someone to reflect on ideas with, but sometimes you need actual help. That was the case for this steel beam that needed to go on top of the walls. The main reason for the steel beam is to hold up the entire ceiling, but also create strength for the future office. Now, this was sketchy and dangerous. We had this idea to get this up with the use of the tractor. A 7-meter long steel beam originally used to fertilize the fields. I welded some brackets on it the day before. We fiddled around back and forth before we settled on attaching it to the front of the tractor and then raising the front using a chain. Yeah. And after a lot of work, we could land the front on the bricked pillar we had made. Then it was just a matter of raising the front and place that on top of the other wall where we had made a wooden pillar inside of the wall. And the brackets I had welded on were totally squandered by placing the beam, and honestly I don't think I need them. It won't move. I was worried doing this, but having help makes it a lot easier. And now it's up, and look how cool it is. It's got all these things hanging down from it in which I can hang lights or clamps or myself. Yes! Other times it's just me on my own, doing bits and pieces like wiring the electrics. Once the beam was in though, we could finish the last wall and then add the doors. So we have this double door which is getting stuff in and out of the workshop, but it also serves another purpose, because the idea is to have the table saw somewhere here, which means I can open the doors if needed and run longer stuff through. So what is the thing I think most woodworkers kind of overlook in their workshop? Well, if you're in the business of trying to sell what you actually make, you need really good photos. And even though you can take good photos in your home, it means a lot of moving stuff around in order to just get one shot. It's a lot of work. So this wall will be my dedicated photo wall. So I'll have some kind of nice wallpaper covering this wall, but I'll also have backdrops that I can roll down and take photos. I mean, you could make the most beautiful furniture, but if the photos are crap, it's really hard to sell. And I've seen my fair share of bad photos. I mean, it's a bit of a letdown to see all these crazy good craftsmen, way better than me, make beautiful furniture and struggling selling them because of the photos. I mean, the marketing is so important, you shouldn't overlook it. Spend some time to learn photography and it'll be a game changer, for sure. Now, I need to get on with the ceiling. I consider this to be as important as the actual woodworking space. One of the most important things for a good photo though is lighting, so along this wall I'll have some good lighting to be able to get the photos I want. But I'm not even remotely close to that point yet. So what about the cost? Well, up until this point in the build I have spent exactly... I suppose that if I had hired someone else to do this workshop, putting up these is the toughest thing I've ever done in this entire build. Oh my lord. It's exhausting. Up and down the ladder, up and down, up and down, up and down. It would be done by now, because I've mostly worked weekends on this. The reason being, I wanted to maintain my woodworking and 3D printing during the weeks to be able to maintain content about that, to earn money to build the workshop. But I've slowly realized that isn't gonna cut it. I have to put in more time to get it done, so this spring I am dedicating more time into it. And I'm slowly starting to see a room come together now. It's turning into something. Was it a mistake doing it myself then? Absolutely not. I've learned so much about construction doing it on my own. Usually people talk about the cost of your own time, but this has been somewhat of an education for me as well. So I have to consider that into the equation as well. And doing it together with others helps as well. It gives us a sense of moving forward together. But there is still a long way to go, so I said there's been some danger involved in this. Well, first of all, getting up on top of the silos to get them down along with the motor was a bit scary. At first we went up there without safety, but I didn't like that, so I ordered myself a strap. I'm not sure that did anything really except give me some comfort. Also, getting the steel beam in with the tractor seemed like a risky business, but so far everything has worked out the way we wanted it to. The absolute hardest part in this build was putting the ceiling beams up with the bracings in between. I must have walked up and down the ladder at least 300 times those days. But eventually they were all up and I could finally wire the electrics for the ceiling lights, which meant finalizing the electric wiring. So, is it worth it? Because it's certainly expensive. But on the other hand, I will have my very own space where I can do whatever I want. Well, don't get any ideas. See, I don't mind spending everything I own on my dream of having my very own workshop. Because if I can have that, I have everything I want. And you know, one day the kids will eventually move out and I can actually spend some time in here. There's still a lot to do, but I cannot wait to show you some of the ideas I have for this space.